America has 1,300 gigawatts of power waiting in line to connect to the grid. Not planned. Not proposed. Already in the queue, with paperwork filed. Plus 749 gigawatts of batteries behind them. And the median project that actually got built last year waited more than 5 years to get there. Here's the part that breaks the model. Historically, only about 13 to 14% of the capacity that enters that queue ever reaches commercial operation. Roughly 3/4 of it withdraws. Last episode the constraint was people. This one you can't fix by hiring. MYR, the grid is where the AI story stops being a spending question and becomes a physics and paperwork question. You can have the money, the land, the turbine and the chips, and still wait half a decade for an interconnection agreement. No amount of capital shortens that. What capital can do is pay someone to build the wire. And the utilities are paying. The Edison Electric Institute puts 2026 investor-owned utility capex at $238.8 billion, up 17%, and the 14th consecutive record year. Their 5-year forecast through 2030 is $1.4 trillion. Inside that, $900 billion of investment tied to connected large customers, representing more than 55 gigawatts of load. And it's worth understanding why the queue is slow, because it's not simple bureaucracy. Every project has to be studied against every other project ahead of it. When one withdraws, and 3/4 do, the studies behind it get redone. The queue is slow partly because it's full of projects that were never going to get built. So who converts $1.4 trillion of utility capex into revenue? There aren't many. Building high-voltage transmission is a licensed, bonded, unionized business with equipment nobody else owns and crews nobody else can hire on short notice. The largest is Quanta Services. Its backlog is $53.4 billion, up 49% in a year. But the number I'd actually watch is the near-term one. Quanta's 12-month backlog went from $20.05 billion to $32.31 billion. 61% growth in work scheduled inside a year. That's not a pipeline. That's signed work with a start date. Second quarter revenue, $9.56 billion, up 41%. Adjusted EBITDA margin 11.5%, up from 9.7%. Adjusted earnings per share $4.24, up 71%. The electric segment alone is 82% of the company now. But here's what tells you how fast this repriced. In February, management guided 2026 revenue to a midpoint of about $33.5 billion. By the end of July they'd raised it to $39.5. $6 billion of upward revision. In 5 months. On a company that was already the biggest in its industry. They also spent about $1.24 billion on acquisitions this year, 4 deals, including Enerfab in July. Now the most underdiscussed chart in American energy. In a single year, the composition of that interconnection queue inverted. Solar in the queue, down 19%. Storage, down 16%. Wind, down 19%. Natural gas, up 86% to 253 gigawatts. Read what that means. The people financing these projects concluded that intermittent capacity doesn't clear a data center's requirement, because a data center doesn't have a night shift or a calm day. It runs flat out, always. The queue didn't shrink because demand fell. It resorted toward what can run 24 hours. MYR Group is the cleanest pure play on the wire itself. And its margin story is the best execution evidence in this sector. Transmission and distribution operating margin, 3.7% in 2024. 7.9% last year. 9.4% last quarter. Second quarter revenue $1.08 billion, up 20%. Earnings per share $3.17, up 86%. Free cash flow last year was $232 million, against $11 million the year before. The work is explicitly AI-driven. Its Ellie Myers unit is prime contractor on Dominion's Chase City to Cloud project, 2 new 230 kV lines built to reach data centers. One caveat, MYR gives no quantitative forward guidance. Your underwriting execution, not a promise. MasTec is the diversified one, and it just posted records across the board. $4.4 billion in revenue, up 23%. Adjusted EBITDA up 40%. Adjusted EPS up 49%. 18-month backlog, 21.4 billion, a record. And the stock fell about 11% on the print. Two things explain it. Its clean energy and communications backlogs grew, but power delivery, the grid segment, reportedly came in roughly flat quarter over quarter. And while adjusted EPS guidance went up, the gap number went down. Worth noting how fast this industry is consolidating. MasTec agreed to buy the MYR Group, a 3,000-person electrical contractor, for about $1.65 billion, and closed it in 13 days. Now the episode's most important slide, because it's the one that argues against everything else. Primoris Services is in exactly the same end markets. In February it guided 2026 adjusted EBITDA to $560 to $580 million. In May, they cut it. The stock fell about 47%. In June, they cut it again, to $275 to $325 million. From a $570 million midpoint to $300, in 4 months. The cause wasn't demand. It was cost overruns on 6 renewable energy projects. And the chief operating officer departed effective the same day as the second cut. A booming end market does not guarantee execution. In this business, the backlog is the easy part. Here's the field, and it's deeper than the headline names. One name most screens miss, Centuri Holdings. 2 of its 4 segments are dedicated electric transmission and distribution. Backlog $6.5 billion, up 44%. And a distinction that matters, Dycom looks like a peer and isn't. More than 80% of its work is telecom fiber. Grid exposure is incidental. The sector label will mislead you if you screen on it. The equipment layer underneath is arguably the tighter constraint. GE Vernova's electrification backlog alone is $40.6 billion, with orders up 66% organically. Siemens Energy's grid technology orders rose 41%. Prysmian carries €17 billion of transmission backlog. These aren't order books. They're rationing systems. Even with the cruise and the permit, there's one more line. Large power transformers, the 100-plus megavolt ampere units a substation can't run without, now take 48 to 60 months to deliver. In 2018 it was 18 to 24. Some quotes now run into 2031. Would McKinsey put the 2025 power transformer supply deficit at 30%? You can see it in the order books of the people who make this gear. GE Vernova's gas turbine backlog reached 116 gigawatts, and its reservation slots are sold out through 2030. Powell Industries, a roughly $10 billion company, carries a $1.8 billion backlog, and booked a single data center order over $400 million after quarter end. Now let me argue with my own thesis, because the demand data isn't one-directional. NERC's 10-year outlook now projects summer peak demand up 224 gigawatts through 2035, a 69% increase versus what NERC itself forecast 1 year earlier. 13 of its 23 assessment areas are flagged for resource adequacy risk. That's the bull case, from the reliability regulator. But in July, the Energy Information Administration cut its 2026 generation growth forecast by about 1.3 percentage points versus its own June estimate, because the large loads people were forecasting are, in several regions, already online. Long-run forecasts are climbing. Near-term growth is being marked down. Both are true, and the gap between them is where the mispricing lies. For scale, Berkeley Lab put data centers at 4.4% of U.S. electricity in 2023, and its reference case has them near 12% by 2030. That's the whole argument in one line, not whether data centers use a lot of power, but whether the grid can be rebuilt fast enough to hand it to them. So what breaks this? Start with price. Quanta trades near 38 times forward earnings. MasTec near 40. These are contractors, businesses with single-digit to low double-digit EBITDA margins, priced like software. Then the policy layer. FERC's Order 1920, the rule that forces long-term regional transmission planning, is still working through the Fourth Circuit. Order 2023, the interconnection reform, remains in litigation. PJM was found non-compliant in 2025. The reforms everyone is underwriting are not yet settled law. And Primoris already showed us the third risk. Fixed-price construction converts an execution error directly into a guidance cut, with no cycle to hide it. My verdict: The grid is the hardest bottleneck in the AI build-out to solve, which makes it the most durable one to own, and the most dangerous one to overpay for. Best positioned, in my view, MYR Group. It's the purest expression of the transmission constraint. The margin recovery from 3.7 to 9.4% is already proven rather than promised, and it trades meaningfully below Quanta on forward earnings. The disconfirming evidence, and I take it seriously, its backlog is growing at 20% while Quanta's grows at 49%, it gives no guidance, and it's a fraction of the scale. If you want the demand signal in its highest beta form, Quanta is the better instrument. I just think you're paying for it. Most likely path over 1 to 2 years, backlogs keep expanding while completion timelines stay long. Call it a 70% probability that the interconnection queue does not meaningfully shorten before 2028. 3 trackable signals. First, the natural gas share of the LBNL queue in next year's edition. If it grows again, dispatchable power is winning. Second, Quanta's 12-month backlog, not its total. Near term is where the truth is. Third, large power transformer lead times. Anything under 40 months means the constraint is genuinely easing. Catalysts up, FERC finalizing Order 1920 compliance, and faster gas plant approvals. Catalysts down, a hyperscaler trimming capex, or another Primoris-style execution failure. Upstream, this pulls transformers, switchgear and high-voltage cable, GE Vernova, Powell, Prysmian. Downstream, it sets the energization date for every project in Part 1 of this series. That's Part 2 of 3 in Who Actually Builds AI. We've done the people and the wire. Part 3 follows the heat, and the one constraint you can't negotiate with, because it's physics. I'm Big Z, follow me, see you in the next deep dive.